Hi. Last night at our regular scheduled governing board meeting, there was some information I presented to the governing board as it relates to solving our financial deficit. One of the commitments I've made to you is to be overly transparent and to communicate to you as much as possible some of the conversations and ultimately some of the decisions our governing board must make in order to have a balanced budget. One of the things I shared with the governing board last night, and it's consistent with what I've shared with them since I've been the superintendent, to be honest, is that the value in our organization are the people and the programs. That's what makes us who we are. And so as we look at financial solutions, it's incredibly important that we keep at the forefront what's important to us, and that's people and programs. Mathematically, you can solve our financial issues pretty easily, but translating those mathematical solutions into actual changes in the organization is where it becomes difficult. And I just hope we continue to focus on people and programs as we move forward. One of the recommendations I made to the governing board last night was to reorganize the curriculum department at the district office. Part of my direction from the governing board and part of my commitment to the governing board was to first look for solutions outside the classroom that would allow us not only to continue to move the organization forward, but will allow us to also have a cost savings. What I asked the governing board to approve was the adoption of 2 new job descriptions, which would essentially take the role and responsibility of 3 different positions within the organization and collapse them into 2, essentially saving 1 to 1.5 full-time equivalent positions. The governing board also was presented with the beginnings of a discussion around class size. We knew after November that our class sizes would go up, and although that's never a topic that as the superintendent I wish that we would have to broach, it's the reality. I recommended to the governing board last night, and we'll have more opportunity to talk over the next few months, that we increase our targeted class size ratio by 2 at every grade level. What that allows us to do is to have our numbers inch up, but still stay competitive with average class sizes across the valley. Obviously, though, and you all understand this better than anybody, a targeted class size does not actually translate to the actual class size in every single one of our classrooms across the district, but it does give us kind of a parameter as to the direction and the number we want to target in order to still continue to move the organization forward, but also capture a savings. The governing board also was presented last night with the initial discussions on school closures. I've said time and time again, there have been no decisions made as to what school is going to close. We just know that that's an option, and we know that there's a savings that can be captured if we were to close a school. What I can tell you, it seems pretty reasonable to believe that the high school would not be closed and Cactus Canyon wouldn't be closed, because obviously we only have 1 high school and 1 junior high. And so the discussion last night focused around the 4 elementary schools, focused on the square footage, focused on the capacity of the buildings, focused on the energy cost utilization of each of those campuses, in an effort to begin giving the governing board an idea that if we were to go from 4 elementaries to 3, what would that look like on our campuses? How many classrooms would we have to utilize? What would the cost savings be? The governing board made no decisions last night, and in fact there's going to be a number of times in which they come back to this issue to talk more about school closures. But I do think it's important that you have an opportunity to begin looking at that information so you too can understand the rationale and the reason behind some of the school closure discussion. I also presented the governing board last night with a timeline of making decisions, and I think that's important because I think it will be easy for us over the next 3 months to lose track of what we need to do, when we need to do it, in order to be in a position that come springtime we have a clear idea that our budget is balanced and that we can move forward and offer contracts. The last thing that I want you to be aware of was the discussion last night as it relates to what our deficit is. And I know I've said this before, but I think it's important that we keep it in mind. Some of our budget deficit projections are based on just that, projections. Do we have a decline in enrollment? And if so, what is that? Are there healthcare cost increases? And if so, what are those? We know, though, that at a bare minimum, our deficit based on our operations today is 1.5 million. If we track a 2% decline in enrollment plus an increase in healthcare costs, that moves us up to about 2.2 million. One of the things I want our governing board to spend time thinking on as well, though, is that we have no resources either in our budget currently or any foreseeable resources coming from the state that would offset any sort of capital costs, buses, air units, any of those costs that we know eventually we're going to have to pay. And so I've also recommended to the governing board that we begin a system of starting to create some contingency plans within our budgeting process so that we can have resources to start addressing issues like transportation, air units, or whatever capital issues that we may have. I recommended to the governing board that we look at about a $500,000 contingency, which would make our deficit as we move forward for school year 15-16 about $2.7 million. And that's a lot of money. But I also believe that there are some pathways to solutions that allow us to reach that goal and still keep people and programs at the forefront. As I've said previously, it's important, I think, that you have information and that you are part of the conversation. And beginning with this governing board meeting, I will archive all of the hard copy documents that the governing board was given in order to have the discussions on a folder on our website, and I haven't created that yet, so when I do and I have the name of it, I'll send it back out to you. But that way, not only can you have a short video, but also you can spend time going back and looking through the artifacts that the governing board was given in order to help better understand the situation that we're in and the logic used towards some of the solutions and recommendations. Finally, I want to thank all of you who have given suggestions to me, whether it be suggestions on cost-saving opportunities with supplies, with materials, with restructuring part of our organizational operations. I fully am aware that the solution to our $2.7 million deficit isn't going to be just found sitting on my desk. It's going to be found because smart people like you take the time to suggest and provide input into solutions that allow us to move the organization forward. If you have questions or concerns, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and I appreciate the help. Thanks.